All right. So just to sum this up very quickly, there was the No Labels Party that is changing its name to the Independent Party. And there are many people, myself included, that believe that there's going to be some confusion in this. So Clean Elections got involved. There's a lawsuit. They want to go in front of a judge for clarification. So to talk about this part of it, by the way, the Secretary of State was on with Bruce and Gatos yesterday and said, I'm going to quote this, that there will have zero impact on most independent voters is what the Secretary of State told Bruce and Gatos. So to talk to us about this from Clean Elections is Tom Collins. Tom, it's good to talk to you again.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me, Mike.
So, first of all, can you talk about what the Clean Elections Commission does and why you have an interest in this and why this lawsuit?
Absolutely. So, the commission for voters created the commission, almost 30 years ago now, and we administrate a couple of different things: a campaign finance program that depends on the definition of the word independent. We use the word independent in the statute, and then we are exclusively charged with communicating with voters, contributors, and candidates about participation in the election system. And so what this decision, if you want to call it that, does is it directly essentially overrides both the Clean Elections Act language and overrides the commission's authority to do communication with voters in terms that they're actually going to use and understand. And that's the root cause of, for us, but it all does relate to this inherent confusion that's going to be caused by this if this is effective and stands.
So if there is, I'm going to ask you just so I know for sure that we have this right. If you are already registered as a party not declared voter, which is called an independent, but you are party not declared, you are not automatically going to be registered with the independent party. But people that change party affiliations or register for the first time could accidentally register with a party instead of party not declared.
There are a couple of different places this is going to happen. It is correct that, as we understand what the Secretary is trying to do, no one who is currently an independent will become a member of the Arizona Independent Party. However, the implementation of this change, if it happens, means that when you go on to the MVD's website to change your voter registration, or even update your residence, when you move and you change your voter registration, you're going to see maybe this Arizona Independent Party thing. You're not going to see the word independent, and that's going to cause confusion. And where that confusion really hits home is when you go to vote in our state primary. If you are an independent, you can select a Democratic Party ballot or Republican Party ballot, et cetera. If you're in this Arizona Independent Party, all of a sudden you can't make the selection that you want to make. So I think that the reality is that this is going to necessarily cause confusion. There was a survey in California when a similar thing happened about 10 years ago, where 73% of the folks who ended up in their California Independent Party mistakenly did so. So, there's a story today on AZ Central by Ray Stern that really talks about, practically every single official, whether it's the Clean Elections Commissioners who are, we're a nonpartisan agency. 2 of our members who voted for this lawsuit are independents themselves. Whether it's Republican and Democratic county recorders, the AZ Central story by Ray Stern really says that everyone in elections is telling the Secretary's office this is not the right move. And in fact, actually implementing this change, if it is effective, is going to be really difficult within the election cycle.
Yeah, and the thing that, and I've talked to one of the guys on the show who's not here today, Pablo, is a party not declared. He's an independent voter. And he did that because he does not want to be a part of a political party.
Right. I mean, that's how I am. So I'm an independent. I've been an independent a long time. I live in a, somewhat competitive legislative district. Sometimes there's not a primary on one side or the other. I want my vote to matter. So I want to make sure that I can pick the party that has the primary, right? We're talking about regular voters here, right?
Right.
Regular voters sees the word independent, and what we're concerned about is, like we saw in California, they're going to accidentally end up in the wrong party. And if you listen to the folks who are running the No Labels Party, they keep talking about how we're going to be the people who are going to give voice to independents. That's not clarifying the confusion. That seems to me to be trying to leverage the confusion to get folks to get their registration numbers up. I mean, we're talking about the difference between 1.5 million independent voters in this state and something like 42,000 no labels party voters in this state. And we're talking about the entire election system having to change because of a unilateral decision that didn't have any notice, didn't have any, or that we're aware of, or anybody else's. And really, you just don't see this kind of bipartisan, professional level and independent level, pushback against a decision like this by a secretary.
Yeah, and I think that I know at least in recent years it's been the fastest growing demographic of voters is the independent voters. So we are not talking about a small number of people, and we are also talking about people that are changing party affiliations from Republican and Democrat they want to be independent. Well, now they may be confused and join another party.
That's exactly right. And if you look at some of the studies that, ASU has a Center for an Independent and Sustainable Democracy, and they've done some studies around independent voters, and you see independent voters throughout the course of a 4-year election cycle for president, for example, move in and out of parties, right? So they're in there making decisions. I want to be in a party now. I don't. I do. It's not a unified group of people. It's people who have their own individual reasons why they don't want to be in a party. And in fact, if you don't want to participate in a party primary in Arizona, your county recorder will offer you a nonpartisan local ballot that doesn't even have these partisan races on it. And that's only for independents.
The other thing I think may happen is this could have an adverse effect and unintended consequences for what's now the no labels party, because if people feel they're being duped or tricked, which I'm not accusing them of doing,
Sure.
but if they feel like that's happened to them, there may be blowback that want nothing to do with that party. Isn't that also a possibility?
I think it is. I mean, I think the kind of concern that the commission in voting for this lawsuit, and you hear from other election officials, I think is, look, the way voters interact with the system is in a transactional way, right? Folks aren't out there day after day changing the registration. When it's time for them to move, when it's time for them to select a ballot for the primary, when it's time for them to go and look up who their candidates are in our candidate statement pamphlet, that we'll put out for the primary, those kind of things. That's when they're thinking about it. And they're not going to spend an hour analyzing the different names and different titles, right? They're going to see the word independent and they're going to say, oh, I'm an independent. That's what I want. Or worse yet, if they're filling out a paper voter registration form, we have now, because of the way this is being rolled out, confusion about whether or not, if you write in independent or independent party or whatever on the part of the form where you fill in what party you're in, that itself is going to be subject to scrutiny by county recorders and others who have to determine what you intended. And I mean, so the issue here is, number one, the secretary didn't have the authority to make this decision at all, because there's a petition process by which no labels pick this name. That's what counts. There's no other avenue for them, right? So he's just wrong about that, unfortunately. And then the second issue is that it's not just what they want to call themselves. I mean, people can call themselves anything. There are people who register claiming to be in all kinds of different parties, right? They just write in something, right? Parties don't exist. But the issue here is that when it comes to election administration, if you do something on this side of the ledger, there's all these follow-on effects. And the process here didn't consider any of those. And what you're hearing from the commission, what you're hearing from county recorders, what you're hearing from others, is that that those follow-on steps are complex, and they're going to cause the voter who's not paying attention today is going to come in closer to the primary and wonder why they're getting the ballot they're getting instead of the one they wanted.
All right, so the last question is, because we are sprinting toward this election year, how quickly do you expect to have this lawsuit heard, and when do you expect a resolution?
Well, so we are working on that right now with our attorneys, how to press this forward. Our hope is that the Secretary of State's office will recognize that we ought to get to the merits on this quickly. We shouldn't spend a bunch of time quibbling about, procedural stuff that really, if the Secretary wants this resolved one way or the other, then the Secretary of State's office, we hope, will recognize that we need to get to the merits. We need to get this decision teed up for a judge. It's a legal question.
Yep.
It's a very simple question. And we think we can get that resolved before, certainly by, I would say, beginning of the year at the latest.
Tom, it's always good to talk with you. I hope to talk again during the election cycle.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch and listen to the new season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.